Tonight you guys are going to review working with irrational square roots. So what processes do we need to do with irrational square roots? Well, there are two concepts where we work with irrational square roots just in 8th grade. And that's finding the integers an irrational square root lies between and approximating the value, estimating the value of an irrational square root. So the first one is, how do we find the integers or the whole numbers that an irrational square root lies between? Well, the following are the steps we're going to use to help us do that. And the very first step is to find the two perfect squares the number under the square root is between. And then we square root those perfect squares and we find the two integers the square root is in between. So for example, a question that you might get was, what two integers does the square root of 2 lie between? Well, step 1, we look at 2, which is under the root, and 2 lies between the perfect squares of 1 and 4. So and then step 2, we square root the perfect squares, and we get the square root of 1 is 1, the square root of 4 is 2, so the square root of 2 lies between the integers of 1 and 2. So how do we approximate the value of an irrational square root? Well, to do this, there are the following steps. We find the two integers the square root is in between. We find which integer the square root is closest to, and we guess and check with decimals and squaring. So what is the decimal approximation of square root of 2? Square root of 2 is in between 1 and 2, but closer to 1. We can say square root of 2 lies between 1 and 1.5 because it's not closer to 2, so it's closer to 1, so we can kind of look closer. 1 squared is equal to 1, and 1 half squared is equal to 2.25. Since we squared, we look at the 2 under the root again to help us find closer decimals. 2 is closer to 2.25, so square root of 2 is closer to 1.5. And we can get even closer and say square root of 2 lies between 1.4 and 1.5. And to make sure, we square 1.4 to get 1.96. We square 1.5 to get 2.25, and we know 2 is closer to 1.96, so our square root is closer to 1.4, and we could keep going and look between very, very close to 1.4, but we are very close enough. This is basically just guess and checking. We're just getting closer and closer and closer and closer and closer to the point where we can use the calculator. And that is all for tonight.